Probando. Probando. Saludos. Internet. Hola, Internet. Saludos a todos los audiófilos del mundo del habla hispana. Audiófilos y locos. Gracias por estar aquí en tu canal de audiófilos y locos. Estamos comenzando un poquito lento porque lo que pasa es que ayer tuve otro en vivo ayer. 2 corridos. Jordi, como hoy no está el yuca, volvemos a la normalidad. Es decir, a empezar tarde. Por supuesto, no podrías esperar de menos. Jordi, gracias por estar aquí. Saludos a todos. Hoy sí que tenemos algo muy especial. Tenemos a Peter Comeau. Peter Comeau. De la compañía Wharfedale. Bueno, en realidad no es de la compañía Wharfedale, es del conglomerado AGI o IAG, International Audio Group, que están basados en la China y son dueños de Wharfedale, de Quad, de Mission y de varias otras compañías que no me acuerdo ahora mismo. Algunos de ustedes me pueden ayudar con esa información, pero antes de eso, les voy a hablar de algunas cosas. Ayer el Yuka y yo estuvimos hablando de música y creo que ustedes me piden mucho eso, así que les voy a compartir unos discos que he estado escuchando en el poco tiempo que he tenido. A pesar de que estoy de vacaciones, resulta que me han salido más conciertos para tocar. Ahora mañana voy a tocar con una orquesta de la comunidad, es una orquesta amateur. Pero dije que quería tocar con esa orquesta amateur porque estoy tocando con Juliet, con mi hija y con mi esposa Lucy a la misma vez. Estamos los 3 tocando en la orquesta y vamos a tocar en un concierto del 4 de julio por acá, por un sitio que se llama Mamaroneck. Y pues para mí es un placer ver a mi hija y a mi esposa tocando en la orquesta. La orquesta es un poquito amateur, pero nada, mi parte es muy difícil también, tengo que estudiármela. Y además de eso, la semana que viene tengo también un concierto en el Museo Metropolitano de Nueva York. Tengo que hacer un concierto con unos colegas del MED, una asociación privada para una compañía japonesa. Vamos a hacer un concierto ahí en el museo y pues va a haber un solista muy especial que se llama Anthony Ross Constanzo. Él es un contralto, o sea, un hombre que canta a una tesitura muy alta. Y su especialidad es la música barroca y vamos a hacer un par de cosas barrocas allí en el templo de... ¿Cómo se llama el templo en el Museo del Metropolitano? Que tienen un templo egipcio ahí montado. Bueno, ahí a veces se hacen conciertos. Es una actividad privada. La cuestión es que, nada, sigo balbuceando, pero vamos a hablar de unos discos que he estado escuchando que a lo mejor a ustedes les interesa. Si te gusta la música litúrgica, la música coral, tengo este disco de la compañía Foné, que es una compañía italiana muy especializada. Graban con equipo de tubos. Ustedes posiblemente los conocen. Yo sé que Jordi los conoce. Y ellos también venden, además de LP, venden Super Audio CD. Esto es una misa, la misa del Benedictus del coro de la Catedral de Montecassino. Y entonces esto es una colección de las obras litúrgicas que ellos usan. Aquí hay música de Marcello, o no, no es de Marcello, es de Albinoni. Y muy interesante, hay coros de niños, hay coros, hay órganos y está muy bien grabado. Y creo que estos son solamente 500 discos, 496 copias. Así que apúrate y compra la tuya. Te pongo el enlace en la descripción. Yo no me gano nada por eso, pero te pongo el enlace para que lo veas. Jordi lo tiene en Super Audio CD, muy bien. Pero es buena música y variedad para tu equipo de música. También hablando de música litúrgica, esta misa de Marco Antonio Charpentier. Charpentier fue un compositor que fue básicamente oprimido por Jean-Baptiste Lully. Jean-Baptiste Lully fue el compositor más grande de 1700. Creo que, bueno, él nació en el 1600, Charpentier, pero Charpentier nació en París y estudió en Roma, pero cuando regresó tuvo que estar bajo la dictadura de Lully, Jean-Baptiste Lully, un hombre que aparentemente hasta lo acusaron de asesinato. y que terminó fulminantemente suicidándose sin querer, porque antes los directores dirigían con una batuta que le daban al suelo para marcar el ritmo, y entonces él mismo se traspasó el pie con la batuta y le dio gangrena y se murió. Así que no me río, pero bueno, pero hay gente que dice que se lo merecía. Era un tipo medio subversivo. Bueno, nada, pero esta misa de Marco Antonio Charpentier está muy bonita. También tiene coro de niños, tiene órgano. Esta es la misa, lo que le dicen un Te Deum, que es... esta es la misa de gallo, perdón. También hay un Te Deum de Purcell. Purcell, dicen que fue el compositor más grande que tuvo Inglaterra. De los compositores ingleses fue el más grande. Digo, Handel también, pero Handel creo que era alemán. Anyway, buen disco. Esta versión de Ángel no siempre sacó discos que sonaban bien. Este suena bastante bien. Bastante bien, y es un buen grupo tocando. King's College Choir, que es el de los grupos más famosos en Inglaterra, corales. Así que nada, esto tiene la estructura formal de la misa, pero es una misa de gallo. O sea, tiene el Kyrie, tiene el Christe Eleison, el Gloria, el Credo, el Ofertorio, el Sanctus y el Agnus Dei, Cordero de Dios. También he estado escuchando este disco nuevo de Alison Balsom. Alison Balsom es una trompetista inglesa muy buena. Alison Balsom es tremenda trompetista. Y aquí ella grabó con Trevor Pinnock, con English Concert, con Trevor Pinnock. Y son 2 discos. Y la verdad es que está muy bien grabado. Y la música es de Handel, es de Purcell también. Handel y Purcell, no puedes ir mal. Es una buena fórmula. Handel y Purcell, para los que les gusta la música barroca. Aún si no conoces mucho de música clásica, esto te va a gustar. Esto suena muy bonito. Ella es una excelente trompetista. Además de eso, hay chisme. Tengo un chisme por ahí. ¿Quién quiere oír el chisme? Tengo que esperar que llegue más gente, porque si no llega más gente, no puedo decir el chisme. A ver, ¿alguna pregunta? Estamos un poquito lentos hoy. Es que parece que después del yuca, eso... No olviden que pueden comprar la camisa del yuca en la descripción de la mercancía de la tienda de Audiófilos y Locos. El billete está en los cables, como dice el yuca. Pero este disco es muy bueno y ella es muy conocida, especialmente en los tabloides de Inglaterra. Ustedes saben que los ingleses tienen unos tabloids muy fuertes. Y ella estuvo casada con un director, ahora no me acuerdo del nombre del director, pero él ha dirigido el Met, él dirige el Metropolitan Opera, algunas óperas hemos hecho con él, y él se divorció de ella, y ese divorcio fue un desastre en términos de los tabloides. Bueno, yo no sé ni qué se dijeron, ni lo que no se dijeron, pero hasta a ella le pusieron un apodo, no me acuerdo cuál es el apodo que le dieron a ella. Pero los tabloides ingleses son crueles, son muy crueles. Y fue una época difícil para ella su divorcio. Pero es gran trompetista, recomendada, excelente, bellísima y muy buen músico. Y este es un muy, muy buen disco, se los recomiendo. Les voy a poner el enlace en la descripción, ¿ok? Del disco de Alison Balsom. También un poquito de jazz. Joey Alexander, este muchacho es muy joven. Parece que tiene como 13 años en realidad, pero es extremadamente joven, un talento increíble. Ya yo he hablado de él en otras ocasiones, tengo otros discos de él también. Hola Fabián, bienvenido, saludos, gracias por estar aquí en un domingo familiar. Y este muchacho es súper talentoso. El disco es un gatefold y la mayoría son composiciones de él, de hecho. Un muchacho muy enfocado. La grabación es buenísima, es una grabación Verve, el de sello Verve. Y se lo recomiendo fuertemente. Otros discos que estuve escuchando son discos más viejos, no son discos modernos. A lo mejor se consiguen. A lo mejor los vas a conseguir pronto. Se oye, ¿verdad? Tuve que cambiarle micrófono. Miguel Ramón Monzón González pregunta, ¿ha oído a Lan Lan? Sí, no solamente lo he oído, sino que lo he conocido. Pero Lan Lan hace muchos años que está por ahí, tocando. Lan Lan es un tipo que ahora mismo él llena estadios. Él hace conciertos en estadios. Es súper famoso, súper conocido, idiosincrático y pues una persona muy interesante, un gran pianista también. Barenboim, hay un masterclass de Barenboim que hizo en Chicago, que yo tengo un video de Barenboim donde él, en el masterclass hay varios pianistas jóvenes y Lan Lan era uno de ellos en esa época. Estamos hablando de fines de los 90 o principios del año 2000. Lan Lan es un Am Romero, no entiendo eso. Ok, a ver, ¿quiénes conocen esto? Weather Report. ¿Quiénes conocen a Weather Report? Esto es música buena de verdad. De los viejos, de la vieja guardia. Jaco Pastorius tocaba aquí. Gran bajista. Y otros grandes músicos. Este es un muy buen disco. No sé, ¿hay alguna reimpresión de este disco que ustedes conozcan? Yo no sé si la hay. Posiblemente la haga. Esto quizás lo puedes escuchar en streaming, en Tidal o en Qobuz. Pero este es un muy buen disco. Si lo consigues usado, lo puedes conseguir en Discogs también. Ahí fue que yo lo conseguí. Tremendo. Aquí Jaco Pastorius toca una pieza de Bach. ¿Cómo se llama? Es el preludio de Bach. Que es famoso. También toca en Berlin. A ver. No me acuerdo ahora cómo se llama. Aquí no lo dice. No le pusieron preludio de Bach, pero él toca el preludio de Bach. Lo toca como la introducción de una de sus canciones. Es lo único que me acuerdo. Pero bueno, muy bueno. Buen disco. Otro disco excelente, excelente. Bob Mintzer. Bob Mintzer, un saxofonista que hace ensambles muy grandes. Saludos, Carlos. Saludos. Buenísimo. Carlos es bajista. Carlos sabe. Carlos, dime cuál es la pieza de Jaco Pastorius donde él toca el preludio de Bach antes de la canción de Weather Report. Carlos debe saber. Gracias por estar aquí. Bueno, va aumentando el grupo, pero no lleguen tarde porque por ahí vamos a tener la entrevista con Peter de Wharfedale y de International Audio Group. Saludos, bienvenidos a todos. Este disco se llama Papa Lips. Es de Bob Mintzer Hornman Band. Bob Mintzer hacía unas agrupaciones grandes como de Big Bands con muchísimas trompetas, saxofones. Y en una época DMP, la compañía de discos DMP, grababa a Bob Mintzer y lo grababan en círculo. Ponían el micrófono en el medio y hacían un círculo bien grande y grababan así. Y eso hacía un efecto muy interesante en la grabación. Este no es de DMP, este es de antes, de los tiempos de antes. Pero hay unos de DMP que los debes buscar, que salieron en CD nada más porque eran digitales. Donde fue muy interesante. Pero esto es muy buena grabación, buena música. Si te gusta el Big Band, Brass Bands, música funk, como tipo Chicago o también este otro grupo. ¿Cómo se llama este otro grupo? Que a mí me gusta. Ya se me olvidó. Ya me acordaré. Pero es muy bueno. Bueno. También este disco de Dave Brubeck. Quizás no es tan conocido como otros que tú conoces de Dave Brubeck. Pero este disco de Dave Brubeck lo grabaron en el Concertgebouw en Ámsterdam. En vivo. Y está tremendo. Tremendo. Aquí hay una canción que me gusta mucho. Que es un homenaje a Johann Sebastian Bach. Que se llama Brandenburg Gate. Y tiene algunos quotes de Bach. Que toca este muchacho, el saxofonista. ¿Cómo se llama él? Ustedes lo conocen mejor que yo. Pero esto es muy buena grabación. Brubeck en Amsterdam. Se las recomiendo. Es un sonido bien suave. El público, estos eran los tiempos donde la gente iban a los conciertos y escuchaban de un modo cordial. Y los aplausos eran así. No era eso. Era el público del Concertgebouw aplaudiendo a Dave Brubeck. Ok. Así que espero que encuentres la oportunidad para escucharlo. Es un disco muy bonito, muy bonito. Gran sonido, muy bien grabado en vivo. Es que las grabaciones en vivo tienen algo especial porque tú sientes la energía de los músicos que están tocando y tú oyes el público cómo reacciona a veces, alguna persona tosiendo, todo eso le añade las especias. Ese es el spice de los conciertos en vivo. Es muy interesante. Bueno, esos son los discos que les recomiendo esta semana. No olviden también, cuando hablamos con el Yuka, de la Sinfonía en Do de Stravinsky. La Sinfonía en Do, la Sinfonía en 3 movimientos fue lo que yo puse al principio, pero también está la Sinfonía en Do. Esto es de su época neoclásica y es muy interesante también esta música. Ok, les tengo un pequeño unboxing y entonces vamos a traer a Peter, ¿ok? Tengo por aquí para enseñarles. Ayer ustedes vieron los audífonos de este muchacho, de Juan Aribus, también. Si no viste el video de ayer, por favor, creo que ya debe estar disponible, aún con los comentarios del chat box. Vamos a ver si mi cuchillo estaba haciendo cañas. Estas son mis máquinas de hacer cañas para oboe. Es que tengo que hacer muchas cañas para mis conciertos. Ok, aquí tenemos. A ver, Fabián, adivina qué es esto. Hank, hello Hank. Saludos a Hank Catri. Hank Catri de Bélgica. Hank from Belgium. Hello Hank. Hank has a dealer in Belgium, a fantastic dealer called Sound Odyssey. Y si ustedes están en Europa, if you're in Europe, no olviden visitar la tienda de Hank Sound Odyssey. Hank, remind me what town you are, what city you are in Belgium. I keep forgetting. I know you're not in Brussels. But you're close by, maybe. Ah, saludos, Carlos. Miguel pregunta, ¿qué te parece Yo-Yo Ma y sus 3 periodos de las sonatas de Bach, de Bach para cello solo? Gran músico Yo-Yo Ma, gran músico y gran ser humano. Bugenhout. I am probably butchering the name. Bugenhout. I'm not going to try anymore. But thank you. Si estás cerca de Bruselas, si estás en Francia, nuestro amigo que vive en Cibourg, en Francia, visiten a Hank, ¿ok? Él tiene de todo. Hank él tiene OMA, Oswald Mills Audio, tiene Audio Note, tiene marcas muy exóticas de Ed Meitner y todas esas cosas. Tiene cosas muy interesantes. Hank, maybe you have some questions for Peter when he comes in pretty soon. You might have some questions for him if you want. Un DAC. Otro DAC, ¿verdad? Ya el mundo está lleno de DACs. Please, no more DACs. No más DACs. Bueno, vamos a ver. Y es nada más ni nada menos que el Zen Airphono. Esta gente de hi-fi no dejan de producir. Están produciendo más y más. Ustedes saben que a mí me gustó muchísimo el Zenfono. Para mí es un gran preamplificador de fonográfico. Y la idea de esto es que me dijo Ricardo Antón, nuestro amigo Ricardo de hi-fi, que es básicamente el mismo producto, pero con materiales menos costosos. O sea, es de plástico, creo. No sé, vamos a ver. Aquí te da la información, el Quick Start Guide. La garantía te trae un sticker para tu automóvil. O la puerta de tu habitación si tienes 15 años. Y aquí está la unidad. Estas unidades son de 5 voltios, creo. Muy bien empacado. Aquí está, muy bien. ¿Cómo huele? Huele bien. Muy bien. Está muy bonito. Esto parece casi como carbon fiber, un poquito como fibra de carbón. Se siente bien. Es un material suave, no es muy rígido. Aquí tenemos esto. Mira, eso es importante. El filtro subsónico. Yo estoy teniendo problemas con eso. Porque hoy día muchos componentes no vienen con filtros subsónicos. Y yo creo que es bueno tener filtros subsónicos para el caso de que tengas que el fonocaptor y el brazo no estén bien equilibrados. A veces hay resonancia y los woofers hacen así. Para ustedes los que son jóvenes que no saben lo que es eso, a veces si estás poniendo un disco y ves que el woofer se mueve muy rápido pero no se oye nada, esos son frecuencias subsónicas que genera la resonancia del brazo y el compliance de la aguja. Así que esto elimina ese movimiento del woofer excesivo, el filtro subsónico. Es útil, es bueno. No es súper importante en términos de cómo suena, no va a afectar la calidad de sonido, pero sí te ayuda en ese caso. Ok, creo que la diferencia entre este y el Zenfono es que el Zenfono tiene varias etapas de ganancia. High gain, low gain. Este solamente tiene moving coil y moving magnet. Así que tienes que estar seguro de que sea compatible. Supongo que el moving coil será 100 ohmios. No sé, vamos a ver. Ya en el review se los diremos. Pero qué bueno que lo tengo porque quiero probarlo. Ustedes saben que yo tengo mi Icon Audio PS1 Mark II, que está muy bueno, me gusta mucho. Pero bueno, ¿saben qué, mi gente? Creo que estamos preparados. Por aquí veo a nuestro amigo Peter. Y vamos a traer a Peter de invitado al canal de Audiófilos y Locos. Hello, Peter.
Hi. Hello. Good to meet you.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. I can hear you too. Todo el mundo puede. Can you guys hear Peter? ¿Pueden oír a Peter? I have an interesting question here. I'm sorry. Do I have the hi-fi headphone amp for the Stax electrostatic ear speakers? I don't, and it's a shame because somebody loaned me this, a friend of mine from the Met actually, he loaned me these headphones, and I don't have. I thought that that the unit I have here, which is the hi-fi Pro ICANN, that it worked with electrostatics, but no, they used to have a dedicated unit, and they don't make it anymore. Anyway, I'm sorry, Peter. Welcome, Peter.
Okay.
Wow, it's so great to meet you, and I'm so happy that you made the time. I've spent a lot of time with the Wharfedale Lintons, and as you know, it was great interacting with you and talking with you about them. And I want to know more. And I know the people here. Usually, my friends, the group gets bigger as we get closer to finish the video. Everybody arrives late, but people will see it. They will see it repeated. It's a Sunday, and I'm sorry to take your Sunday away also. It's a family day, but I'm happy that you're here with us. So I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. We know that you are in charge of the, is it AGI, IAG, International Audio Group. It's a conglomerate that owns Wharfedale, Quad, Mission, and I forgot about the rest.
Castle.
Castle Electronics. Okay. What's the other British company that, do they own Audiolab?
Audiolab, yes.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Another brand with a big pedigree. I'd like to ask you a little bit about your youth. How did you manage to get involved in music? Did you did your parents listen to music at home, or did they go to concerts? Did they take you to concerts when you were a kid? Can you tell us a little bit about your formation?
Yeah, I actually sang in the church choir for many years. Also school choir as well. Ended up singing in adult choirs. So yeah, that's my instrument of the past is singing. Now at my ancient age, doing my best to learn piano. That's
You play the piano too?
but, yeah, I'm enjoying it.
That's great. I'm going to put on my headphones because I'm having a little trouble hearing you, and I hope it's not because my microphone is creating feedback.
You know what? I'm going to do the same as well.
Yeah, I think headphones may be the best right now. Okay, let's see.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're getting a bit of an echo, I think.
Okay.
By the way, you listen to these quad headphones?
Hold on. Wait. No. I didn't even know that Quad made headphones.
Yeah. I had a lot of design input into these, so I recommend you listen to them.
That's interesting. Well, if that can be arranged, I'm happy to listen to them. Sure.
I think you'll find them quite a revelation for their price.
What is the price?
I don't know what they are in the States. Maybe somewhere around $1,000, or maybe just under $1,000.
Okay, that's a very competitive, very competed zone. But also that's a competitive price. If they were designed by you, that I'd like to hear them.
Okay, we'll see whether we can sort that out.
Great. ¿Se escucha mejor? Can you hear better? People say there's echo. Okay.
Anything else I can do about that from the settings
I guess
here?
Maybe make sure that that you don't have the auto gain. Maybe don't use auto gain. Are you new using StreamYard?
Yeah.
I know that I can only pretty much hear you on one.
Right, I'll switch off the automatic. Is that any better?
I think people are saying that they can hear. Yeah, it's good now. It's good.
It's good now. Yeah. That was switching off the automatic. You're right.
Okay. All right. So when you were younger, you sang in the choir. Did you also go to concerts, or you only perform in concerts?
I did a lot of performing, both as generally in the choir, but also as a soprano soloist. Enjoyed that. And when I got into my teens, that's when I started going to concerts, and I mixed it up. I was interested in all types of music, so we had very good jazz club near where I lived. We also had rock concerts in some big venues. I remember very well going to listen to Emerson, Lake and Palmer when they first went on tour. That was awesome. And we had the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra. I'm sure you know some of their recordings. They were absolutely brilliant. Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra.
Yes, great orchestra.
Yeah, they used to come to my hometown regularly. So, yeah, I was immersed in everything.
What is your hometown?
This was Plymouth, down in the southwest of England.
Oh wow!
Devon.
I think it rains there more than in London, right?
Yeah.
We might have some issues with Wi-Fi. Also, it's possible that we have some Wi-Fi issues.
Okay. Well, we are speaking from across the pond, so I'll be surprised.
Yes, we are. And so, did you have siblings that were musicians that also sang, or your parents? Did you have people in your family that were musicians?
Yeah, I haven't got any siblings, but my mother played piano and church organ. My father had a stab at playing piano as well.
Okay, so you you grew up listening to music, making music, and you know what real acoustic instruments sound like. That's good. That's
Exactly.
great. And then when you were a little bit older, did you work? You created a company called Haybrook. Is that correct?
That's right. I started off actually working in hi-fi retail, and that led me to a period where I was reviewing for hi-fi magazines. And I actually I was one of the sort of famous 3 in the UK that started the subjective reviewing process. And then I actually introduced the word musicality to the hi-fi scene, because I'd met it in terms of performance, especially obviously with regard to classical performance, and it seemed to fit very well some pieces of equipment that I was reviewing in hi-fi magazines. So I started off using it there, initially to a fair amount of criticism, but I think people eventually realized what I was talking about.
I'm going to do a little translation here for my audience who doesn't understand English. So you were a reviewer, actually.
I started off as, in retail and reviewing.
Peter comenzó en su juventud vendiendo equipos de música, pero también como crítico de hi-fi. Y él se atribuye que él fue el que introdujo la frase musicalidad para describir equipos de audio, lo cual es algo is very controversial today. We're surrounded, estamos rodeados por canales de YouTube que lo miden todo con computadoras. We're surrounded now with YouTubers who measure everything with computers. They're trying to use the "I told you so" phrase using computers. There's a particular one that shall remain nameless that went against a very big company, and every time I see him reviewing something, he has like some kind of a screen in front of him that has a graph, and he's going by the graph, and he's describing the sound by looking at the graph, and that just anyway. Let's not go there. There's a lot of things that are not explained. We still don't know enough.
No.
And so tell me about Haybrook. You started the company. Tell me about the development of the turntable.
Haybrook was started when somebody walked into my shop and said he had a pair of Celestion Linton 15s and he wanted something better. But he had a limited budget, and I couldn't really actually find anything that was much better than those. I mean, they were pretty good loudspeakers in the day. Yeah. And so we sort of came to the conclusion, well, maybe we ought to build something. I'd been building loudspeakers from drive units, making my own cabinets and so on. And so we thought, oh, okay, let's just see whether we can build something. And we did build a very nice pair of small speakers, which satisfied him and satisfied me. And we thought, well, maybe everybody else will like them as well. So we started a company, Haybrook, in order to manufacture. And that took off really in a much bigger way than we ever considered it would.
Which was the first model?
First model was the HB2.
Okay.
We called it the HB2 simply because Haybrook, and 2 because it had 2 drive units. But I think the model that made the biggest impact was the HB1, which came out in the early 80s and won 3 What Hi-Fi awards, international acclaim. We sold, it must be getting on for 60 or 70,000 of those during its lifetime. Really went down well.
Yes, I have actually owned Haybrook speakers in the past, and I don't remember exactly the model, but I did have one that was a great speaker. It was a 2-way with an integrated face plug, and I had a metal dome tweeter. It was a great speaker. And so where did the idea of the turntable come from?
I had a friend who came to work for us when we started the company. He was mainly in assembly. He also, like me, had a bit of an engineering background, and he came into me one day and said, "Would you take a look at this turntable, because I want to know what's wrong with it?" So he brought in, much to my surprise, a kit of parts, which he'd got machined and put together. And we went over it, and I said, well, if you did this and you did that, obviously from my reviewing days, I had a fairly good idea of what turntables were supposed to do. And together we modified the design, and again, very much like the loudspeakers, ended up with something which sounded great. So we put it on the market.
And I understand it was very competitive, the price for the time.
It was. Yeah, we were offering a similar design to the Lintons deck for half the price.
Yeah, and in those days it was also Rotel or Addistone. I can't remember exactly the brands, but those were the brands that were sort of in the neighborhood of the price range.
Yeah.
I have someone here, one of my patrons says that he says, I had a Haybrook TT2 table with a Link Basic Plus arm in the late 80s. Wonderful table. To this day, I very much regret selling it. Don't we all? Yeah.
That's great.
And then I want to ask you actually a question about Wharfedale, because I have seen pictures of a very old Wharfedale speaker that was an open baffle speaker, and it had an unusual shape. I'm a big proponent of, as you may know, I love quads. I have a pair of 57s and 2805s, and I'm actually myself we have a project for the channel that we're making an open baffle speaker for mono, because I love mono and I have a dedicated mono system. So can you tell me anything about this speaker? Because I don't know anything about it. This one of the first speakers that Wharfedale made was a single driver open baffle speaker, from what I understand.
Yes, I think the one that you're referring to, the most famous one though, is the SFB3, which I have a pair of. I can't remember the exact date that they came out, but it would have been in the late 50s, I think. Because what happened was Gilbert Briggs went to listen to the first quad electrostatics, the prototype quad electrostatics, what you referred to as the ESL 57.
Right.
And he was very worried that these speakers were so good they'd destroy all moving coil loudspeaker sales. But then when he came to his senses, he thought about it. They were very expensive. They needed mains power. So he thought, well, if I could do something similar, but using moving coil loudspeakers that didn't need any mains connection and could be done a lot cheaper, maybe that would catch on. So that was the design of the SFB3. SF, because it was sound filled. The baffle, he quickly realized the baffle was a big part of the sound generation of the speaker. So he actually had a sandwich panel which you filled with sound to completely deaden it. And then, so SF for sound filled, B for baffle, and 3 because it had 3 drive units. I think it was a 12-inch bay unit, an 8-inch mid-range, and a 3-inch treble unit. But very good sounding speaker. I did a demonstration at an exhibition once to show actually how older speakers can, stand up pretty well. I mean, they were, well, the Gilbert Briggs designs were actually always very, very good loudspeakers. He was a pianist. He knew perfectly well what things should sound like. And, he spent a long time experimenting with his loudspeakers to get the right tonal balance and the right sound. Much the same as we do now.
Yeah, and a lot of these open baffle speakers were designed with corner placing in mind also. I mean, the, the reason for them, are we still talking about the open baffle or not? No,
Yeah,
I lost,
his
I lost you.
his recommendation for the SFB3 was to put it very much like the quad electrostatic, to put it near the sidewalls,
Okay.
a fair way into the room. Yeah, maybe a third of the way down to the room, something like that.
So when the quads were being sold in England, you were selling hi-fi too. So you saw how quickly those ESLs went.
Yeah, and at a point where, let's say, solid state electronics was taking over from valves, and suddenly valves were seen as old hat. Nobody wanted them anymore. I managed to buy a complete system of a quad 22 power amplifier and a pair of ESL 57s, and I ran that for many years. That was great.
Great. And then the 63s came around, and those opened the world. It was a different world. It was a stereo world. It was a hi-fi speaker, because the 57 was conceived for mono.
57 was conceived for mono, but very much a hi-fi loudspeaker. It's, well, because you still use them.
Well, they're a little bit trickier in location because they do a little bit of beaming because of that. But the way that the 63 produces the sound is much more like a point source. So it's more of a design for stereo. Yeah, I love both. I love both. I actually was going to sell my 57s, and I did put them on AudioGone, and then I quickly took them out. I decided I'm not going to sell them. I can't do that. I cannot sell my quads no matter what. Even my wife said, "Don't sell the quads." So
there's something magic about the mid-range of the 57.
Yeah,
it's extraordinary.
Yeah. So now, I guess I'm going off the tangent here. I can't stop talking about quad. But can I ask you, since quad is under the umbrella of the International Audio Group, is quad thinking about future speakers, perhaps future electrostatics? Because I see a lot of do-it-yourself companies coming out with electrostatic speakers. I've seen that at the shows.
Yes, we see a lot of electrostatic loudspeakers when we go to exhibitions, and they come and go. The reason that they come and go is because they seem as though they're very easy to design. In practice, they're quite difficult to get right.
Yeah.
And if we obviously at Quad, we have all the mathematics that Peter Walker and his co-engineers did in the original, and we know how complex these things are. Sometimes we get people going to listen to other manufacturers' electrostatics, and then they come back to our exhibition room and say, how come yours are a third of the price and so much better? And I say, well, we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
In terms of what Quad is going to do, I mean, but to a certain extent, we reached the pinnacle of electrostatic design with the 63, which turned in eventually to the 2805, and now, the 2812 and 2912. We're always looking to what we can do in order to improve things. And generally, over the years, I think we've improved a lot. I mean, if you were to go from your speakers to our latest version, then I think you'd find that it's a bit of an upgrade. We've always done that, and we're always looking at that. But we don't, at the moment, have any plans for anything brand new. But watch this space, I'm always saying. But as far as other speakers are concerned, yes, we do. I'm working even now on new quad moving coil loudspeakers.
Well, you've been busy designing speakers, that's for sure. And let's go back. Let's go back to the Lintons. Linton is an all-purpose speaker. It's unbeatable, I think, for the price. It's fantastic. Um, I'm wondering, um, it's Wharfedale thinking about maybe making an MK2 version, a point 2 version of the Lintons. Have you thought about that? I'm sure you
Again,
have. You're gonna tell me, like you're gonna tell
well,
me.
no, I was going to tell you the opposite. The Linton is very much a classic for us. It's, we call it a heritage product. We started this whole heritage, looking back at designs in the past and making them better and bringing them up to date. And it's very funny to see other manufacturers jumping on that bandwagon. But Linton for me was a sort of love of my life loudspeaker. I always wanted to do it, and it was great to be able to do it. And as far as I'm concerned, it fulfills everything that I wanted from that design. So no, we don't have any need to do a Mark II. Let's put it like that. I mean, it may, again, there's always improvements that can be made somewhere, but I think for Linton, we're very, very happy with both the public response, the reviewer response, and the continuing sales.
Well, I'm sure that to revive the original Lintons, they had to be a technical, they had to be a creative process, but also a technical process. I mean, the new Lintons are not exactly like the old Lintons, but do they measure similarly? Did you go for the same tone curve, the sound signature? Did you measure those things? Do they measure the same? I don't know about those things.
Well, there were lots and lots of Lintons. I mean, it started off as a two-way. It eventually became a three-way. But
I didn't
remember,
know that.
I said at the outset, I built a lot of kit loudspeakers using Wharfedale live units in the early days. And I sold Wharfedales when I was a retailer, and I reviewed Wharfedales when I was writing for magazines. So I have a very good idea of if you like the Wharfedale sound. And that's what I wanted to recreate. I didn't want to take an original Linton, because there is no such thing as an original Linton. It
okay,
changed all the time.
That's good to know. So the Linton evolved pretty much like
Linton evolved. So what you've got now is a 21st century evolution of what Linton is.
Right.
But yes, it has that richness, that warmth, that tonality that the original Linton had. But of course, it brings it completely up to date, far more accurate, and has, as you know, has an appeal right across the board, no matter what type of music you play.
Okay, I'm gonna do a little translation for my friends here who don't speak English. Estoy hablando con Peter sobre el desarrollo de las bocinas de las Lintons y pues Peter me confirma lo que yo dije en mi reseña, y es que la Linton original no fue solamente un modelo, fue evolucionando y cambió de 2 drivers a 3 drivers, y pues lo que buscaron ellos fue emular la firma sónica, la huella tonal del sonido de las Linton. O sea que si a ti no te gusta el sonido de las Linton originales, pues no tienes nada que buscar, porque eso es lo que ellos están haciendo. Para otro tipo de sonido existen otras bocinas, y es lo que le voy a preguntar ahora. Le voy a preguntar sobre las otras bocinas que hacen Wharfedale. Now, Peter, if somebody is not a huge fan, or because of the music that they listen to, maybe they listen to rap or reggaeton and they don't want to listen to the Lintons, what other models do you have? Do you have the Elysians? How would the Elysians, I'm not saying the Elysians are for rap. That was a very bad setup for the question. But by the way, Wharfedale makes speakers under the price of the Lintons that are fantastic. I mean, I've owned Wharfedale Diamonds, and they all sound incredible, including at the lowest price. What is the lowest price of a Wharfedale speaker today, of a diamond? Is it $200?
What are they? They're probably about $350 in the US, I should think.
Well, that's very competitive. That's something else I should listen to. So how would listening to the Elysians, for example, am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, Elysian is correct.
How would that change over a Wharfedale Linton? Because those are speakers that are on a different price bracket.
They're a very different price bracket, and they deliver a performance commensurate with their price bracket, to the point where I've actually been approached by retailers saying, please, will you increase the price, because we can't sell anything more expensive. If that gives you an idea of what they sound like, then it gives you an indication of the quality of Elysian. I mean, if you take the Elysian 4, it's an astonishing loudspeaker. I'd happily put it up against your quads. Wait
a minute. No. No. Nothing can go against the quads. Never.
Okay.
Elysian 4. I'm not sure. The Elysian 4 is also a 3-way, right?
That's the floor standard. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, it's because you have one that's about the size of the Lintons. Which one is that?
There's one Elysian 2, which is a stand mount. Yes.
And the Elysian 4
is the floor standard. Yeah.
Okay. And what is the retail on that?
Oh, I have no idea what the retail in the US
is. Okay. You design speakers. You don't sell them.
That's right. Yeah.
You're the brains of the operation. So, of course, I would love to put anything against my quads. Yes, and I would love to.
I mean, I'm not saying they're the same as the quads. Obviously, nothing can do what an electrostatic speaker does. But what they do is give them good competition. So if I'm saying this because you were talking about, other styles of music which maybe are not suited to electrostatics. Something where you want more drive, more dynamics, more power capability, more bass, whatever. The Elysian 4 will give you all of that.
Bass? What is bass? This is a subwoofer free zone. I don't have subwoofers in this room because I haven't found a way to integrate them yet into my quads. I haven't found a way to do it right. So I don't.
I can tell you why. The quad is a dipole, right?
Yeah.
So you need a dipole subwoofer.
Yeah, but only Gradient makes them, right? There used to be those Celestions. If I could get one of those Celestion subwoofers, that would be great. Yeah. But I believe music is 70% of the music exists above 60 hertz anyway. So for what I listen to, for what I do. But I have no doubt that probably the Elysian 4 can also produce a large scale representation of an orchestra. If you're listening to Mahler or Stravinsky, I'm sure he can do it better than my 2805s. Yes, my 2805s are very dynamic, but yes, they do have a limit. But then again, I don't want to go deaf. I need my ears. I don't want to lose my hearing. It's okay to listen from the last row in the orchestra auditorium.
Yeah,
it's okay to do that.
I've met a lot of people who want to be in the first row. So
yes, in the first row of the Led Zeppelin concert, right? I wanted to ask you one more question, and then I can check to see if there's more questions from people. Tell me something about this, because I have never tried a quad, one of the old quad amplifiers. They had this current dumping technology. I know that this is probably before your time with quad, but I'm sure as a reviewer and as a salesperson, you knew this technology. Is that something that I should try for my 2805s? I mean, I have pretty good amplifiers. I have pass labs. You can see them there. But what makes them different? These current dumping amplifiers from Quad.
Okay, we still make current dumping amplifiers.
I'm sorry.
Quad have 2 current dumping amplifiers on their list at the moment.
Today's Quad amplifiers are also current dumping. That technology has been carried over. They still use that technology.
It is. And in fact, when I first started working in IAE, I was working closely with an engineer who was improving and evolving current dumping technology. So, yeah,
that's good to know.
Yeah. As to whether you should try it, yeah, by all means, give it a go. Whether you find it the equal of the Pass Labs, I can't say. I mean, I have great respect for the Pass Labs amplifiers as well. What the Quad current dumping does really, really well is it gives you that Pass Labs Class A sound, but with as much power as you need. We have a 250 watt mono power amplifier that works really well with the big 2912 loudspeakers. I used that at exhibition in Copenhagen for 3 years running, and we every time I demonstrate it, we have people coming into the room, and then when I finish the demonstration, they all wander around and look behind the speakers to see where the subwoofer is. They cannot believe that the electrostatic produces a wide range signal. Everybody seems to have this feeling that electrostatics need solvers and inhibitors. Where do they get this idea from?
Wait,
with the right amplifier, you don't need it. You don't need either.
Yeah.
It's a full range electrostatic. A reason it's called full range is because it's full range.
Well, yeah, I've heard the bigger versions of mine, the ones with more panels, and those have a lot of bass. Yeah, they produce a lot. Mine do too, but yeah, no. So, do you know someone that can help me get a pair of these amplifiers just to try, maybe?
Well, I'll put that on the list.
And also the Elysian Force.
Yeah. So yeah, the QSP, the Quad QSP is 100 watt per channel stereo current dumping amplifier, and the QMP is a 250 watt mono. And the idea of current dumping is that you have a Class A amplifier doing most of the work, as you know, from the idea behind Pass Labs is that it's the first watt that makes the big difference.
That's right.
So we've got in current dumpers, we've got a Class A amplifier which is providing somewhere around up to 10 watts in pure Class A, and then that it's difficult to describe. But do you know what an electrical bridge is?
No.
You have four elements. No. Okay.
Explain it as if you're going to explain it to a 5-year-old.
Okay. So if you imagine 4 elements, right? So you've got a diamond shape, if you like, and then up here you've got a Class A amplifier, right? And down here you've got a Class B amplifier, and over here you've got a reference inductance resistance, and over here you've got the loudspeaker. Right?
Okay.
With me so far? So the loudspeaker is obviously having to be driven primarily by the Class A amplifier. That's fine. But at some point that Class A amplifier is going to run out of power.
Yes.
Now what happens is the reference inductance and resistance over here is in a bridge formation with the loudspeaker over here. So any imbalance causes this amplifier to provide the necessary correction to make the loudspeaker behave. Okay?
Is that what they call? Oscillation?
So
Is that what they call oscillation?
no.
No, okay.
So no, it's a type of feedback, but it's a type
Okay.
of feedback. It's a type of feedback which is not negative feedback. It's called feed forward, because this bridge is constantly looking at the musical waveform which is going into the loudspeaker and correcting any imbalance.
Because there is a
So
communication between the amplifier and the speaker. The amplifier is getting feedback from the speaker. Correct?
well, in a way, yeah, in a
Yeah.
way it is, but the way the amplifier output stage is working is always making sure that this bridge is balanced. And
Okay.
it's using the reference inductance resistance to make sure that it's always balanced. So you get a Class A amplifier working up to 10 watts, and then when the dynamic requirements of the music signal are greater than the Class A amplifier can provide, the Class B amplifier comes in. That's why it's called current dumping. It provides the extra current. But because this bridge is always in balance, it doesn't matter that this Class B amplifier is maybe distorting. I mean, obviously we design it so it isn't, but if there is any distortion, the Class A amplifier corrects it because the bridge always has to be in balance.
And if there is distortion, it probably sounds better too.
No.
Have you heard
Don't start me down that road.
Have you heard these amplifiers coming from other places that have 0.0000005 distortion? I've heard them. Some of those don't sound very good because they use too much feedback, I think.
Yeah, absolutely right. So I mean, the one thing that I have a lot of problems with is with amplifier designers whose goal is zero distortion. And I asked them why. I said, well, why are you trying to aim for that? And I said, well, obviously, we should have zero distortion. But why? Well, because we should. But all the experiment on audibility of distortion have shown that pure harmonic distortion, less than 1%, is inaudible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but we should still have zero distortion. But in the goal of trying to achieve that zero distortion, you're introducing non-harmonic distortions.
Yes.
Because you've got a long loop around the amplifier, right? You've got, the output stage and the speaker, and then you've got this loop that goes all the way around back almost to the preamplifier and comes back in again. And you're saying, well, if my loudspeaker is causing any distortion, that signal, that error signal, has then got to travel all the way around and be compared at the input stage of the amplifier. Well, a lot happens. There's a lot of high-gauge stages in between the input and the output, and they introduce their own problems. This has been well known since the 1950s when Reg Williamson looked at the stability of every single stage of a valve amplifier and came up with the Williamson low distortion amplifier. But it wasn't low distortion in that it was percentage low. It was low distortion in that he controlled our operating characteristics of every single stage in the amplifier. That's what matters.
You can buy an Audio Note Ongaku amplifier that was, what's that, like 8 watts per channel with 1% distortion. And you're not going to hear it. I mean, and if you hear it, it's probably good.
Because it's pure harmonic distortion. So with musically related distortion is inaudible, below 1%. But anything not musically related is extremely audible, even at very low percentages.
Well, but
so that's what an amplifier designer should control.
Musicians,
get rid of the non-harmonic distortions.
Musical instruments make distortion. I mean, you should hear some of my reeds. They're very distorting. They make a lot of noise, but they enrich the sound. They add texture. They add brilliance to the sound. That's what it's all about.
Because it's harmonically related.
Yes. Yeah. Now, why is it that I was never able to drive my 2805s with tube amps? Never. It just they were too late. The bass was always too late. I really need solid state for my 2805s. The 57s I can drive with I can drive those with tubes, but the 2805s I'm not convinced. And I've had some
What
nice tube
what
amps,
tube
but
amplifiers have you tried?
EL34s,
No, no.
KT88.
Never mind that. That's you're just throwing numbers. I mean, you don't talk about
I don't
transistors when
know.
you talk about solid state amplifiers, do you? No. What makes have you
I
tried?
don't. I don't want no trouble.
You don't want no trouble. Okay,
No,
okay.
I've had,
I,
I had Octave Audio, push pull 40 watts from Germany. I've had Rogue Audio 100 watts per channel KT 120s. I love EL34. That's my favorite tube,
yeah.
and they
I mean,
sound beautiful, but they
have you
just
ever
don't.
had have you had let's say an old Radford SPA 25 or MA 15? Have you had any of Tim Paravicini's amplifiers?
Not
Have you had any quad tube amplifiers? Have you had anything with a decent output transformer? That's what matters.
okay. You put me to shame now. I'm embarrassed. Yeah,
No,
no, I
it's
haven't.
at one of my organ notes. I mean, it's difficult to find really good tube amplifiers because not many designers understand how to design output transformers.
You think that the 63s can be driven successfully with tube amps?
Yeah, done it myself.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. And in fact, the 60 watt per channel quad power amplifier does a really, really good job with them.
Yeah, but that's
I
solid
love it.
state. That's solid
No,
state.
no, 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 no. The 60 watt tube amplifier.
Oh, I need
It's
to look up.
absolutely lovely.
I need to get up to speed with the quad products.
Yeah.
So is it time for you to also? I want to ask you about the Mission speakers. This is what I'm
Okay.
dying to hear. The Mission speakers. I remember Mission. Oh boy, do I remember Mission. Those speakers, fantastic. There is a speaker. I heard a demo on YouTube, and it was just on YouTube with someone's phone or whatever. I don't know what it was, but there is a demo from Munich, and they sound incredible in a large room. They sound incredible. I'm talking about the 770s. Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about the Mission 770. How do they differ from, I know they're not the same price range, but from the Lintons, for example? It's completely different.
Okay. So two things come in here. One is that when I was working on the first Haybrook loudspeaker, I was still reviewing for hi-fi magazines. And I went up to see my editor in London, and he was bouncing around on his bean bags, listening to these prototype loudspeakers, which were the Mission 770. And I really, really enjoyed them. I mean, they were, you remember what I said about introducing the word musical? They were the epitome of musicality in terms of hi-fi. And I was just blown away by these things. And I've, again, like the Linton, I've always wanted to do the Mission 770, but bring it up to date. So in terms of appearance, it's the same. In terms of performance, it's very similar in the way that the mid-band really grabs you and gets you bouncing around with the music. But what we've done is we've worked hard at improving the frequency extremes. So now, as well as an absolutely brilliant sounding mid-band, it's got great sounding treble and bass as well. So, and I've managed to put it together as a cohesive whole, with thanks to COVID, funnily enough.
Yes.
Because when I started the design, normally, I work on a loudspeaker for, if I'm lucky, 12 months. But because COVID came in, I was able to work on these for 2.5 years. And that allowed me to do 174 prototypes before I got to the point where it was over the moon with these loudspeakers. And when we introduced them at Munich show, the number of people, the hordes of people who came up and just said, you know what? These sound great. And how come you're just playing music? I said, what do you mean playing music? He said, well, we go to other exhibits and they're playing this tinkly tonkly audiophile stuff. He said, you're just playing music. You're playing requests.
Who knew? Who knew?
Yeah. I mean, we were playing rock, pop, jazz, classical, anything that we thought was entertaining. And we had couples coming in and sitting down and staying for hours. I mean, just really enjoying them, really getting off on the music. So yeah, mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
The other aspect was that, you know, I joined Mission in 1999. I worked with Mission in the UK for 5 years. And I got to know what the Mission sound was. And it's a very different character to the Wharfedale sound. It's much more explicit, much more in your face compared to Linton.
So, I noticed that, the more extroverted. So if somebody doesn't like the sound of the Lintons, or they want to upgrade from the Lintons and they want something more vivid, then they can go to the 770s.
Yeah, that's it. You got it.
Wow, that's incredible. I can't wait to hear those either. I wish I had time.
We're also making those in Huntingdon, the home of Mission.
So okay, those are made in England. Okay.
Completely under my control. You know, I get to visit the production line every day, make sure that they're doing everything right.
That's great to know. You know, you were talking about the comment that the person made at the show. It just brought memories of, you know, some audiophiles. You hear these demos and you hear somebody playing the drums so badly. It sounds like my washing machine lost the belt. You know, it just. And then they listen to this. Whatever. Anyway, this is why I try to I try to tell my people, you know, listen to music. It's important. Go to concerts.
Yeah, I'll tell you something else as well, which amused me when I first went over to meet reviewers in the States. That I went to visit John Atkinson of Stereophile with the Mission Astro, which was a big. What was that? $35,000 pair of speakers.
Which ones? What?
Mission Palastro, they were called.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah. And they'd been delivered to his house, you know, and he put them in his listening room. And I went in, and he said, "Okay, I'll go and make a cup of coffee. You set them up." So he went off to make a cup of coffee. I looked on the carpet. There was some strips of tape on the carpet. I thought, that's obviously where he puts his loudspeakers. So I put them there. And he came back, and we had some coffee, and we listened to some music. And he said, "Right, you've finished up." And I said, "Well, I have finished setting them up." He said, "What, already?" I said, "Yeah. Is there anything wrong with the sound?" He said, "No, they sound great." I said, "Yeah, well, that's it." He said, "Can't believe it." He said, "Other manufacturers come in here and they spend 2 days setting their loudspeakers up,
the microphones,
adjusting them this way and that way, and playing this recording and that recording until they get everything what they say is right." So well, you don't need to do that with properly designed loudspeakers. You just don't.
So you're living now in Huntingdon or in London?
I'm living just 10 miles outside Huntingdon in the beautiful Cambridge countryside.
So which is your nearest orchestra?
I go to a great concert hall which is about 20 miles from me, which people come to. It's only small. I think it holds about 80 people, but it's just such beautiful acoustics that we get all sorts of really top class musicians coming in order just to play in that concert hall.
You probably get a lot of early music, especially.
We get a lot of early music. We get a lot of string quartets, but we had a pianist and a harpsichordist who came to play, and she was just so thrilled. It was Liszt had played there. And she just wanted to come and play at this venue that Franz Liszt had played at. It really just thrilled her to bits. The sound is just phenomenal.
I wonder if my friend Jori Vinikur has played recitals there. He's also a harpsichord specialist.
Yes, in a town called Stamford.
It's nice to have a theater where you can actually hear a harpsichord. An instrument like the clavichord, you cannot hear it anymore today because there's too much noise. There's the air conditioning in the halls, so it's nice that you have a quiet enough house that can play a harpsichord to an audience.
And we also have the Bosendorfer concerts in Huntingdon. Obviously, a lot of them piano based, but we get piano and other instruments there too. So yeah, there's a lot of live music going on around, and there's plenty of rock music and folk music in Cambridge as well. Lots and lots to go to. And then of course we got London, which is only an hour away. So
yes, but there's no parking. There's nowhere to park.
Doesn't matter. We've got when they're running, we've got good trains. So yeah, we get down to the Royal Opera House, have a great time there. That's a great venue. Yeah.
We just had Antonio Papano. He conducted the Met.
Oh, fantastic! My son-in-law worked with Antonio Papano because he works now with Copenhagen Opera. But he worked with the Royal Opera House for some time, so he worked with Antonio.
Nice guy. I got a chance to talk to him a couple of times. Nice guy.
He's great. Yeah.
So I want to go back a little bit. I'll let you go pretty soon, but I want to go back to the Lintons. When you develop the Lintons, there are a lot of things you have to think about. I mean, even though you are the chief designer, you have the bean counters and you have the other people bugging you about this and that or creative ideas. So you make the speaker pretty much sort of by ear, but then you also have to measure it. How does that work?
Well, this is something that when I first did the first Haybrook speakers, spent 18 design note because I went into it thinking I knew how to make a loudspeaker kit, and I came out of it realizing that I didn't know how to make loudspeakers. So it was a long learning process, and part of that learning process was discovering the iteration between measurement and listening. So now actually I use three processes. One is simply to speed things up, and that is a computer simulation of what the live units, cabinet, and crossover are doing.
Okay.
And the reason I use that is simply to generate a prototype, nothing more. Doesn't do anything else. It just helps me generate a prototype. But then with measurement, so we've got two elements now. We've got the iteration between measurement and computer simulation. And what that allows me to do is to accurately map the acoustic slopes. So, for example, if I want a Linkwitz-Riley fourth order slope, I can measure it and then do the simulation in the computer, and I can get something really, really close to it. And then element 3 is taking the prototype into the listening room and listening to what I've measured. And the funny thing is that they always sound awful. And it takes me somewhere between 12 and 100 prototypes before I get what I want. And they all measure flat. They all measure the same, but they all sound different. For example, I have just been working with a design where I was changing a capacitor. I actually had two capacitors on the treble circuit, and I was changing the value of those capacitors. One of them was a 4.7 microfarad, and then bridging it was a 0.47 microfarad. I like to do that because the smaller capacitors actually have a slightly cleaner sonic signature, especially when you're looking at treble units. And eventually, it took me a long time to work it out, and I was just listening and really just playing around with values. But I found that if I increased that 0.47 to a 0.68, the music just came together. It just gelled. And that's ridiculous, because you talk to any electronics engineer and he would say, but that's within tolerance. You know, you're talking about such a small percentage value, it shouldn't make any difference. But I found it in that particular instance, it does. So yeah, you can't measure. I can't measure that difference, but I can hear it and I can demonstrate it to anybody else easily.
Yeah, there are many things that you cannot measure. Yeah.
Mm.
I'm thinking, the day that you see your firstborn, the day you graduate, uh, the day a relative of yours dies, you cannot measure that. That has to be felt, and music is the same way. Music works in mysterious ways. Tell me about, you have a new speaker that I saw on YouTube, that you presented a new speaker for the Wharfedale company. It's bigger than the Lintons. And what's that called?
That's called Dovetail, because that was the Wharfedale hierarchy went Denton, which I produced in for the 80th anniversary, Linton, which was for the 85th anniversary, and now we're doing Dovetail, which we're trying to squeeze into the 90th anniversary. So
there was
it's a larger loudspeaker, and that'll also be UK built.
Oh, great. Now, how did you manage to get so much bass out of the Lintons? This is what I'm wondering about, because you can knock walls out with that thing. It's incredible, the power that it has.
Well, for years, I've been struggling trying to design small loudspeakers that sound big. And without sort of blowing my own trumpet, I think I've done a reasonably good job. But you have to compromise. You have to fiddle around in order to try and make small speakers sound big. Two reasons. One is that you actually haven't got much internal volume and cone displacement to work with. And the other is you're limited by the width of the baffle. So I don't know whether you're aware of this, but in loudspeaker design, we have something called the baffle step. The baffle step occurs because at high frequencies, all the sound is reflected by the front baffle and comes towards you. As the wavelength gets longer, it eventually gets bigger than the baffle of the loudspeaker and bends round it. When it bends round it, you lose all that power that should be coming forward. You're losing it to the rest of the room. And it's actually a 6 dB power loss, which is huge. It's very audible. And we call that the frequency at which that occurs. It's not a sudden frequency. It's over a range of frequencies. But we call that the baffle step, and it has to be compensated for. So, for example, you could start off, let's say, I did it once with the Mission 780. It's a 5 1/4 inch drive unit in a small baffled loudspeaker. That 5 1/4 inch drive unit, if you put it on a big baffle, is actually 90 dB sensitivity for 2.83 volts input. But when you put it on the small cabinet that I was putting it in, it suddenly drops to 84 dB sensitivity. Yeah, so you're losing all that sensitivity. So then you have to have higher powered amplifiers. But basically, the problem is that you've lost everything. You've lost dynamic impact. You've lost the ability to really drive the room properly. There's a lot of other acoustic factors come into this. So when you look at Linton, it's a big loudspeaker with a big bass unit in a big cabinet. So you've got lots of volume, you've got lots of displacement available from the cone, and you've got a baffle step which integrates with the room. It's so low, it's in the 400 hertz area. And in rooms, you get room gain below 400 hertz. So you're locking into the room very successfully. And that means that you can generate much, much higher powers in room than you would with, what became fashionable in the late 90s and around the millennium, which was, tiny little thin loudspeakers. that you could hardly see.
Well, because the danger is that at 400 hertz, then and with such a big baffle, then you're going to gain some coloration. So to counteract that, you use a mid-range. How do you deal? Don't you get more coloration from the diffraction or not?
I think this is a bit of an old wives' tale. I mean, there are people who say, well, with narrow baffled speakers, you get much more precise stereo imagery. And I say, when you go to a concert, when did you ever hear a stereo image?
Yeah, no, it's actually like mono. If you sit at the
Is
back
that-
of the hall, it's mono. It's basically all coming in every direction.
Exactly. So why are you expecting to get this incredibly precise stereo image out of your stereo system? It's nonsense. It's not even there in the studio. You know, if you actually think that you can hear something which is spaced way back in the speakers and absolutely pinpoint dead central, and it's a vocal, you go back into the studio, it's recorded in mono and pan potted into position with a bit of reverb added on. It's the reverb that you can hear. It's the reverb that's pushing it back. And if it's way back behind the loudspeakers, I bet when you look at the power response to the loudspeakers, it will have a dip in it right through the crossover region in order to give you that feeling of space. And when I talk to pro engineers in studios, they cannot stand hi-fi loudspeakers because they push the image back too far. And they say, we can't hear what's going on. They want a speaker which is completely in your face so they can hear everything that's happening.
And that sounds like crap, like the NS10. They sound like shit.
All right, forget the NS10. If you go to something like the ATCs, yeah, I mean, ATC do that really, really well. They still sound hi-fi, but they don't hide anything. I think you'll find the same with the Mission 770. If and when we can get it to you, because they are in short supply. But the 770, you will be able to hear into the recording and the way that things were mixed and put together.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Now, but let's go back to a very important subject for me, which is mono. I am a huge proponent of mono. I love mono, particularly because mono liberates you from the stereo image thing. You can listen to a great mono system and you can sit anywhere where you want in your house and you get a room full of sound. You don't get phase issues with both speakers. You get a pure sound and you get a sound that jumps out of the speaker because the mono image comes out of the speaker and is not the sum of two speakers creating a ghost image in the middle. I try to explain that to some of my audiophile friends. I actually managed to make some of my audiophile friends stop listening to mono with two speakers. It's not right. You have to listen to music. Go ahead.
You know what I'm most disappointed about with the way that we deal with these things today, and that is the original Blumlein patent. Blumlein was an English engineer who invented the concept of stereo. His original patent for stereo was a three-speaker system.
Three speakers,
right,
yes.
and center.
Yeah.
And we should still be doing that. It's wrong. We have the capability now to do that. We have all the technological capability, which we didn't have with vinyl, of course. We had 2-channel or 1-channel, but now with streaming and CD and digital and everything else, easy to do 3 channels again. But we're never going to do it because everybody's wedded to this 2-speaker thing.
Well, Bob Stewart incorporated that into his first DSP products. He had that that setting where you could simulate 3 speakers. But I think you probably need a hobby. You don't have enough to do. I'm going to propose to you that you come back and make mono products. That you make a mono. We already make mono amplifiers. Well, how about a mono phono preamp or a mono preamp? And especially a mono speaker, maybe a horn-loaded speaker that is sensitive enough that can produce sort of like in a movie theater, a mono sound. What do you think? Not a good idea? Maybe.
We have to. Unfortunately, we have to think commercially. And yeah, we'd sell one to you, and maybe we'd sell one to somebody else.
But you know
We
what?
wouldn't be living with it.
But I have news for you. Records are really expensive. Records are really expensive right now, and I can go to the flea market and buy mono records for $1. I have so many Heifetz, Caruso, Juicy Berlin. You know, I have so many. Actually, I gotta show you this one.
Yeah.
Oh, where is it? Look at this. Look at this. This will never be back.
Yeah.
Sir Adrian Bolt conducts an orchestra. And
Yeah.
this is actually a brand new record a friend of mine gave me. And in one side, he rehearses a Britain's Young Person's Guide, and on the other side, they perform it. This sounds incredible in my system. You can make products for people so they can save money buying mono records all over the world. Otherwise, they're going to end up in the trash. I know. It's not commercial. Yeah. Actually, let's go to this now. Where is the future of hi-fi? Are we all getting smaller and smaller and smaller and more MP3s? Because even though the records are back, it could be a fad. I mean, it's not going to last forever. Where do you see this going?
Well, although I still use vinyl, I'm a great fan of streaming. I stream from Qobuz through Roon because I find Roon, apart from sounding really good, for pushing everything, a digital stream through, and very convenient. It's what I love about it compared to the days when I used to try and develop using vinyl is that streaming is very, very repeatable. And that's what you want as a design engineer. You want to know that when you listen to something one day, it sounds exactly the same as it does another day. And so when you make changes to your loudspeakers, it's not the source which is changing, which I always had a problem with vinyl, because vinyl would change from day to day. A turntable is not a stable device, but there you go.
Right.
As to where people want to go, I've given up trying to second guess. I've spent 45 years trying to convert people to listening to hi-fi, and most of the time they just won't do it. They just go, "Oh, I can't hear the difference." Well, when we put them to the test, they can. I mean,
yes, they can.
And to a certain extent, the hi-fi hobbyists are our worst enemy. These people who talk about bass, mid-range, and treble, the people who go on and on about, "Oh, I never heard that detail in the treble before." That's doing the whole thing an injustice, because most people, the average person goes, "Well, I haven't got ears that are that acute." Whereas what I do with the people who say they can't tell the difference, I sit them down and play them, let's say, 2 different amplifiers, and say, which one gave you the most musical enjoyment? And they get it straight away. They go, "Well, yeah, that one," because it just sent shivers down my spine, or it made my foot tap, or whatever. They can tell the difference, and it wakes them up a bit, because they go, "Oh, I didn't realize hi-fi was about that. I thought it was about, some weird sort of tinkly tonkly boomy whatever." They didn't realize it was about the music.
Well, I think, unfortunately, a lot of younger people who are entering the hobby, they don't trust themselves. They're afraid to listen, because they need someone to tell them how something sounds. And either they don't know how to listen to music, they don't know what to listen for in music, or they don't trust their ears. So they think there is some expert out there has to tell them how something is going to sound. But that's going to change the day after you get it's after you get whatever you get. your ears are gonna, they're gonna get used to it, and they're gonna go on to the next thing. So it has to be experienced. It has to be experienced.
I've always said that the great thing about hi-fi is that you can listen before you buy. I mean, if you're buying a washing machine, you can't go in with a bundle of dirty clothes into your local supermarket and say, wash that in this machine and that machine to see which one comes out better. Hi-fi is great because you can actually go and experience what you're buying before you buy it.
Yeah, and you can listen to the recording of the washing machine over your speakers. well, look, Peter, last question. Is it time to bring back the Haybrook turntable, or perhaps is that the new MoFi turntable?
Well, I'll say it again. Watch this space. You never know what's going to happen.
That's great. Thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for spending your precious Sunday with us. And thanks to everybody else. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. And looking forward to hearing some of these products from Wharfedale and Mission, and watch this space.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pedro. Been
All
great
right.
talking to you.
Have a good night.
Bye.